The massive shape of the TSS Vigilant hung silently in Earth's orbit, its gunmetal hull absorbing the dim starlight. Commander Maria Chen stood at the bridge's observation window, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the distant stars. 20 years of service had left their mark on her face, but her eyes remained sharp as ever, especially now that humanity needed them most. The ship's AI, broke the silence. "Commander, the Arcturi fleet has crossed the Kuiper Belt boundary. Their signals match our previous encounters." Maria's jaw tightened. The Arcturi, a species that had spent centuries dominating younger civilizations, harvesting their resources, and leaving broken worlds in their wake. They'd dismissed humanity as primitive when their first scouts detected Earth's radio signals. That was their first mistake. "Status of the Ghost Protocol?" Maria asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Operating at optimal efficiency, Commander. All quantum signature masking systems are functioning within parameters. To their sensors, we appear to be nothing more than a primitive defense satellite." The bridge crew worked with practiced precision, their movements reflecting years of preparation for this moment. Humanity had learned from its first contact with alien civilizations. While other species flaunted their technological achievements, Earth had chosen a different path, one of careful preparation and strategic deception. "They're launching their standard greeting, Commander," Lieutenant James Rodriguez reported from his communication station. "The usual demands for submission and promises of merciful integration into their empire." A slight smile crossed Maria's face. The Arcturi's arrogance had always been their greatest weakness. Their technology was impressive. Energy weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand stellar flares, and drives that bent space itself. But they'd grown complacent, relying on overwhelming force rather than innovation. "Deploy the quantum mesh," Maria ordered. Across the Vigilant's hull, microscopic arrays activated, bending not just light, but the fabric of space-time itself. To the Arcturi's advanced sensors, Earth would appear exactly as they expected, a planet defended by crude chemical rockets and basic kinetic weapons. The alien fleet grew larger on their displays, sleek, crystalline ships that seemed to shine with their own inner light. Their formation was perfect, practiced, unchanging, just as intelligence had suggested. "Commander," Aria's voice held a note of urgency. "They're charging weapons. Standard subjugation pattern." Maria nodded. "Right on schedule. All hands, prepare for Phase 1. Remember your training. Today, we show them why humanity survived every challenge Earth threw at us." The Arcturid flagship launched the first shot, a lance of purple energy meant to disable Earth's primitive defensive satellites. It passed through the space where the Vigilant appeared to be, hitting nothing but vacuum. "Now," Maria commanded. The quantum mesh shimmered and failed, revealing the true Vigilant. Not a primitive satellite, but a warship unlike anything the Arcturi had ever encountered. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to hurt the eye. Technology derived from decades of careful study of recovered alien artifacts and humanity's own innovations. Before the Arcturi could react, the Vigilant's main weapon powered up, not an energy beam or kinetic projectile, but something far more insidious. The culmination of Project Ghost, it fired a pulse of quantum-entangled particles that rippled through space, disrupting the very principles the Arcturi's technology relied upon. Their shields flickered and died. Their weapons lost coherence. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. "Target their command and control systems," Maria ordered. "Selective strikes only. We're not here to destroy them. We're here to teach them a lesson about underestimating humanity." The Vigilant moved with impossible grace for a ship its size, its hull reflecting the light of distant stars as it danced through the disabled Arcturi fleet. Each shot was precise, calculated, dismantling their capability to fight without unnecessary destruction. As alarms blared across the alien vessels and their crews struggled to understand what was happening, Maria opened a channel to the Arcturi flagship. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, as she delivered humanity's message. "This is Commander Maria Chen of the Terran Space Service. You came expecting to find primitives. Instead, you found equals. Remember this day. Remember that humanity chose mercy when we had the power to choose otherwise. The stars belong to all of us." Supreme Commander Vexthor of the Arcturian Dominion stood rigid before the holographic display, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the chaos unfolding before him. The impossible had happened. His mighty fleet, pride of the Arcturian war machine, hung powerless in the void. Their weapons, perfected over millennia of conquest, were silent. Their shields, tested against the fury of dying stars, had failed. And it was all because of beings they had dismissed as primitive apes. "Explain," he demanded, his voice carrying the weight of generations of Arcturian authority. His bridge crew, beings who had overseen the subjugation of 100 worlds, could only stare at their dead consuls. First Officer Zura, her crystalline form tinged with the deep blue of shame, approached. "Supreme Commander, their technology. It operates on principles we've never encountered. They're not just disrupting our systems, they're altering the fundamental laws of physics in localized space." The human vessel, the Vigilant, as they called it, moved through his fleet with devastating precision. Each strike disabled rather than destroyed. Each maneuver demonstrated not just technological superiority, but a message. "We could destroy you, but we choose not to." "Impossible," Vexthor snarled. They were nothing. Their planets showed only primitive satellites, basic fusion technology, rudimentary AI. Our scouts confirmed it. "Sir," Zyra's voice dropped lower, "I believe that's exactly what they wanted us to see." On the main display, another Arcturian cruiser went dark, its power core safely contained rather than destroyed. The human ship's attacks were surgical, precise, and showed an understanding of Arcturian technology that should have been impossible. Commander Chen's words echoed through their command channel. "Your sensors show you what we want them to show. Your scans reveal what we choose to reveal. While you traveled the stars announcing your power, humanity prepared. While you conquered through fear, we learned. While you stagnated in your superiority, we evolved." Vexthor's crystalline hands clenched, creating a sound like grinding diamonds. "Launch the autonomous combat drones. They operate on different principles than our main systems." "They cannot." "Sir," Zyra interrupted, her professional composure cracking. "The drones, they're not responding. According to our logs, they were compromised the moment we entered this system. The humans, they weren't just ready for us. They were waiting for us." The revelation hit Vexthor like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just developed countermeasures to Arcturian technology. They had studied them, understood them, and developed ways to defeat them while maintaining the illusion of primitiveness. The scope of the deception was staggering. "They're broadcasting again," the communications officer announced, his crystalline form vibrating with tension. Commander Chen's voice filled the bridge once more. "Your drones are disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. We could have chosen destruction, Supreme Commander Vexthor, but humanity's strength lies not in our ability to destroy, but in our capacity to find better solutions. You came to subjugate primitives. Instead, you've discovered equals. The question now is, how will you respond?" Vexthor stared at the human vessel, its impossible design challenging everything he thought he knew about technological progression. His people had always believed that civilization advanced along a predictable path, that technological superiority could be measured in clear, quantifiable ways. But these humans, they had taken a different path entirely. They had hidden their true capabilities, learned from every species they encountered, and developed technology that didn't just match the Arcturians but surpassed it in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Sir," Zyra spoke softly, "we're receiving data packets from the human vessel. They're protocols for safely restoring power to our ships. They're helping us." Vexthor felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of military command. Uncertainty, The humans had them completely at their mercy, and yet they offered assistance. Their power was evident, yet they chose restraint. As he watched the Vigilant's precise movements through his disabled fleet, Vex Thor began to understand that this encounter would change more than just humanity's status in the galaxy. It would challenge the very foundations of how the Arcturi, and perhaps all spacefaring species, viewed progress, power, and the nature of civilization itself. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood before the quantum analysis display aboard the Vigilant, her dark eyes reflecting streams of data that told a concerning story. Commander Chen, the Arcturi ships are implementing the recovery protocols, but I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations in their secondary systems. Maria Chen moved to the display, her experience telling her something wasn't right. A full spectrum analysis of the Arcturi fleet. Focus on non-standard energy signatures. The AI's response was immediate. Commander detecting concentrated tachyon buildup in multiple vessels. Pattern suggests activation of their emergency beacon system. They're calling for reinforcements. Maria's expression hardened. Of course, the Arcturi wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of absolute superiority. To accept help from a species they had planned to subjugate would be unthinkable. Lieutenant Rodriguez, open a channel to Supreme Commander Vex Thor. Maria's voice carried the weight of someone who had anticipated this moment. And bring our quantum disruption fields to full power. The crystalline face of the Arcturi commander appeared on the main screen, his posture rigid with barely contained rage. Before he could speak, Maria cut in. The backup fleet you're calling won't fare any better than you did. Supreme Commander, you've seen only a fraction of our capabilities. You dare threaten, Vex Thor began, but Maria continued, her voice level but firm. This isn't a threat. It's a chance to evolve beyond old patterns. Your civilization has spent millennia conquering, believing that military might equals advancement. But look at what that philosophy has brought you. Ships dead in space, weapons powerless, and pride wounded by those you considered beneath you. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, adding her own expertise to the conversation. Your tachyon beacon is already compromised. The quantum mesh we deployed didn't just hide our true nature. It's been gathering data on every aspect of your technology. We know how your systems work better than you do. The bridge crew watched as Vex Thor's crystalline features shifted through various shades, a sign of intense emotional turmoil in his species. His voice, when it came, was strained. You expect us to simply accept defeat, to kneel before? No, Maria interrupted. We expect you to learn. Humanity spent centuries fighting itself, believing that dominance was the path to greatness. We learned better. True advancement comes from cooperation, from combining different perspectives and approaches. Aria's voice cut through the tension. Commander, detecting power spikes in the Arcturi flagship's tertiary systems. They're attempting to bypass our containment protocols. Maria's eyes never left Vex Thor's image. Your override attempts won't work. The quantum disruption field adapts faster than your systems can compensate. This is what happens when you focus all your advancement on weapons and conquest. You become predictable. The Arcturi commander's next words carried a hint of desperate curiosity. How? How did you hide this level of technology? Our surveys showed exactly what we wanted them to show, Dr. Mitchell explained. While you were looking for massive energy signatures and obvious technological markers, we developed systems that worked with natural quantum fields rather than against them. Your sensors couldn't detect our advances because you were looking for power, not efficiency. Maria stepped closer to the screen. You have a choice, Supreme Commander. Continue calling for reinforcements that won't help you, or accept that the galaxy is more complex than your empire's philosophy allows. We're offering you something your people haven't experienced in millennia, the chance to learn from equals. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Around them, the disabled Arcturi fleet hung in space, their mighty weapons silent, their supposedly invincible shields useless. But it was more than just a military defeat. It was the shattering of an entire worldview. The beacon, Vexthor finally spoke, his voice carrying a new tone, something between resignation and revelation. The backup fleet would just give you more ships to disable, wouldn't they? Yes, Maria confirmed. And each one would teach us more about your technology, your tactics, your thinking. That's the difference between our approaches. You seek to dominate. We seek to understand. As the implications of humanity's true capabilities sank in, the future of two civilizations hung in the balance. The next few moments would determine whether this encounter would end in a new understanding or spiral into a wider conflict, one that humanity was far more prepared for than the Arcturi could imagine. Deep within the Arcturi flagship, First Officer Zira moved through crystalline corridors with purpose, her form reflecting the emergency lighting that pulsed along the walls. The ship's systems were gradually coming back online, but not fast enough to satisfy the growing unrest among the crew. The humans' protocols are working, she reported to Supreme Commander Vexthor, who stood motionless before a partially functioning tactical display. But there's something else, something in their code. More weapons? Vexthor's voice carried an edge of bitterness, more demonstrations of their superiority. No, sir. It's... Zyra hesitated, her crystalline structure shifting with uncertainty. It's historical data, records of their civilization's development, their conflicts, their failures, their evolution. They embedded it within the recovery protocols. On the Vigilant, Commander Chen watched the Arcturi ships slowly regaining power. Dr. Mitchell approached, tablet in hand. They're accessing the archives we included. Multiple ships, multiple access points. They're learning. Maria nodded. Good. Araya. Status report on the quantum mesh. Maintaining full coverage, Commander. The Arcturi systems are operating within predicted parameters. However, the AI paused, an unusual occurrence that drew everyone's attention. I'm detecting unauthorized data transfers between their ships. They're sharing the historical records at an unprecedented rate. Back on the Arcturi flagship, Vexthor watched as his crew gathered around functioning terminals, their usual rigid discipline forgotten in the face of what they were discovering. Images of Earth's history played across screens. Ancient battles, technological revolutions, environmental disasters, and most importantly, the lessons learned from each. Sir, Zyra's voice was quiet but intense. These records, they show hundreds of human nations fighting, competing, nearly destroying themselves. But instead of one power dominating the others, they united. Vexthor finished, his tone unreadable. They learned to cooperate without losing their individual strengths. He turned to face the main viewer, where the Vigilant waited patiently. Open a channel. Commander Chen's face appeared, calm and attentive. Vexthor spoke, his words carefully chosen. Your species faced extinction multiple times. By your own hands, by your environment, by your technological advancement. Yet instead of establishing absolute control, we found another way, Maria completed. Each crisis taught us that true strength comes from diversity, from combining different approaches and perspectives, something your empire forgot long ago. A low murmur spread through the Arcturi bridge as more historical data flowed through their systems. Records of human wars gave way to images of international cooperation, of technological breakthroughs achieved through global collaboration, of crisis after crisis overcome not through dominance, but through unity. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice cut through the moment. Commander, detecting massive energy fluctuations from the Arcturi support fleet. They're powering down their weapons. On screens throughout both fleets, the story of humanity's journey continued to play. The Great Wars, the climate crisis, the first contact protocols, each chapter revealing how humanity had learned from its mistakes, adapted, and grown stronger through cooperation rather than conquest. Your beacon, Maria addressed Vexthor, was answered an hour ago. Your reinforcements are watching the same data, seeing the same truth. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Vexthor's crystalline form seemed to age before their eyes as centuries of certainty crumbled. Our empire, we believed strength came from unity through force. That progress required a single path, a single vision. He gestured at the historical displays. But you proved that wrong. Not just with your technology, but with your history. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward. Your civilization hasn't truly advanced in centuries, has it? You've gotten more powerful, yes, but actual innovation, real progress. That stopped when you stopped allowing different perspectives, different approaches. The silence that followed was broken by Zira, who spoke with growing conviction. Supreme Commander, the crew reports are coming in. They're requesting permission to study the human archives. All of them. Every ship in the fleet. Vexthor turned to the screen, his crystalline features catching the light in new ways. Commander Chen, you could have simply destroyed us. Instead, you chose to show us what we lost, what we forgot. He straightened, authority returning to his voice, but tempered now with something new. Humility. I request formal diplomatic contact with Earth, not as conquerors, but as equals. Maria finished, a small smile playing at her lips. Welcome to a larger universe, Supreme Commander. The news spread through the HFY Empire like a quantum wave, impossible to contain or control. Across 1,000 worlds, crystalline beings gathered around communication hubs, their forms shimmering with agitation as they absorbed the impossible. Their invincible fleet had been humbled not by superior firepower, but by a species that had chosen to show mercy. Aboard the Vigilant, Commander Chen watched the data streams with Dr. Mitchell and Lieutenant Rodriguez. The ripples are spreading faster than we anticipated, Mitchell observed, tracking the information cascading through the HFY networks. Their entire civilization is questioning. That was always the real mission, Maria replied, remembering the years of preparation, the careful planning that had gone into this moment. Their technology wasn't their weakness, their inability to imagine different possibilities was. Araya's voice joined the conversation. Commander, detecting unusual activity in the HFY communication networks. Multiple governance centers are reporting civil discourse. Some colonies are already calling for reforms. On the main display, they watched as Supreme Commander Vexthor addressed his empire. His crystalline form seemed different now, less rigid, more alive with possibility. For millennia, we have equated progress with power, advancement with dominance. Today, we encountered a species that showed us the cost of that belief. The message continued to broadcast across HFY space as Maria received reports from Earth's hidden observation posts throughout the Empire. Centuries of carefully planted sensors, disguised as space debris or natural phenomena, recorded the reactions. In the HFY colonies, crystalline beings were emerging from their hierarchical structures, engaging in something they hadn't done in generations. Open debate. First Officer Zira is requesting permission to board, Rodriguez announced. She's bringing a delegation of their scientific council. Maria nodded, but her expression remained cautious. Araya, maintain quantum surveillance. Old empires don't change overnight, and not everyone will welcome this transformation. The HFY delegation materialized in the Vigilance conference room, their crystalline forms catching the light in ways that seemed more varied, more individual than before. Zira stepped forward, her movements carrying a new fluidity. We've begun analyzing the historical data you provided, she announced without preamble. Our scholars are disturbed by the parallels they're finding. Our empire's stagnation, our loss of innovation. It mirrors patterns in your own history, patterns your species overcame. Dr. Mitchell engaged directly, her scientific curiosity matching Zira's. Your civilization achieved incredible technological heights, but then stopped exploring new approaches. You focused on perfecting what you had rather than imagining what could be. Yes, Zira's form shifted with emotion. Already, our younger scientists are proposing modifications to our quantum drives based on principles we'd never considered. Ideas that would have been rejected as deviant before are now being debated openly. But not all the news was promising. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice cut through the discussion. "Commander, we're detecting military movements in the outer systems. Some fleet elements are refusing to accept the Supreme Commander's orders. They're maintaining the old ways," Maria finished. "We expected this. Change never comes without resistance." She turned to Zura. "Your civilization stands at a crossroads. The next few cycles will determine whether you embrace evolution or cling to stagnation." Zyra's response carried both determination and concern. "The traditionalists won't accept this easily. They've already begun calling for isolation, for rejection of human influence. They claim we're being contaminated by foreign ideas." "Of course they do," Maria smiled slightly. "We went through similar struggles. Change threatens those who profit from stagnation. But you have something we didn't, proof that a better way is possible." The conference room's displays filled with real-time data from across the HFY Empire. Some colonies were already establishing direct communication with their neighbors, bypassing the traditional hierarchical channels. Others were reorganizing their scientific institutions, breaking down the rigid structures that had limited innovation. "Your quantum mesh," Zyra observed, watching the data flows. "It didn't just disable our weapons. It showed us what we'd become. A civilization so focused on control that we'd forgotten how to grow." Maria nodded, but her expression remained serious. "The hard part is just beginning. Your society will face resistance, possibly even conflict. The question is, are you ready to fight not for dominance, but for the right to change?" Around them, the Vigilant hummed with power, its quantum systems monitoring the growing turbulence throughout Arcturus space. Humanity had lit a spark, but whether it would ignite a renaissance or a civil war remained to be seen. The next few days would determine not just the future of the Arcturus, but the shape of galactic civilization itself.